Howie Bentley here. Welcome to episode number 13 of Sword and Sorcery Heavy Metal. Today, my co-host Matthew Knight and I will be discussing Kings of the Night by Robert E. Howard. It's a Bran Mak Morn tale and one of the greatest sword and sorcery stories ever written. Check it out. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Howie. How's it going?
Oh, it's fantastic. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good. Thanks.
Awesome. So today we're discussing Kings of the Night by Robert E. Howard, which was published in 1930, November 1930, in Weird Tales magazine. And as I said before, when we discussed Worms of the Earth, I think this is one of the best Robert E. Howard tales, sword and sorcery stories he ever wrote. Along with the Worms of the Earth and some of the Conan stuff. And of course, there are others too, but I think this is at the very top. You know, obviously we did a partial concept album based on this. It was when I originally recorded it was called And Rome Shall Fall and released in 2002 on Underground Symphony. And then I re-recorded the songs and with you as a vocalist. And a lot of people already know this. Some people are just newly tuning in and don't know this. But anyway, we did this partial concept album, and it's called The Legacy of Atlantean Kings. And there are two songs that involve Bran Mak Morn. There is And Rome Shall Fall, the song And Rome Shall Fall, which refers to Kings of the Night, the story we're discussing today. And there is Finder of the Blackstone, which refers to Worms of the Earth, which we discussed a couple weeks ago. So that being said, and also there's King Cole's story, and this is probably the only Robert E. Howard tale that I can think of. You might be able to, I'll ask you here in a second, where he brings two of his iconic series characters together in one story, and that's Bran Mak Morn and Cole, King Cole of Atlantis, of Valusia. He's originally from Atlantis, but he was the king of Valusia. So anyway, he brings Bran Mak Morn and King Cole together in this story, Kings of the Night. And can you think of any other tale that Howard did where he brought two iconic series characters together like this one?
I don't think so. And that's part of the magic of this one. Not only does he bring them together, but also links their lineage together, which makes it even more interesting. So I think that's one of the main appeals to the story. But also, I think this is one of the greatest sword and sorcery tales ever written. It's just has this magic about it. Not only the whole military strategy aspect of the battle and all that kind of thing, but it has the first half of it has a rather eerie vibe, and even though there's not too many weird elements, like in Worms of the Earth, I think the whole beginning section really kind of paints this savage image involving the sorcerer and everything. I don't want to totally give away everything, but
that opening paragraph.
Paragraph.
And I have that right here, but this is how you write a hook, and this is how it opens. Well, there's a poem, a 4-line poem at the beginning, but here's how he opens with it. The dagger flashed downward. A sharp cry broke in a gasp. The form on the rough altar twitched convulsively and lay still. The jagged flint edge sawed at the crimsoned breast, and thin bony fingers, ghastly dyed, tore out the still twitching heart. Under matted white brows, sharp eyes gleamed with a ferocious intensity. And that's the opening paragraph there. And it's what he's referring to is the Pictish wizard. He's like the shaman of the Picts. His name is Gonar, and he is performing this human sacrifice on a Roman soldier and cutting his heart out as an augury. And this is one thing too, at how I think Sword and Sorcery differentiates from high fantasy is they get right to the point. I mean, there isn't a page or two of description just that you have to slog through just to get into the story. You're like that. You're right in the story. And also, this isn't just some sort of benign, this would be what we call today black magic that he's doing. And we read on later on in the story that Gunnar is doing this really as he has a deeper understanding of the occult arts or magic. And this is just something he's doing as a show for the tribes because they're a bunch of savages and this is what they're used to. They think this is how magic works. And they're doing this. He's doing this to instill confidence in them because things aren't looking good at this point. Because the whole thing is we have some Romans. It's a small invasion. It's not like a full-scale invasion. But if Bran can beat them, like vanquish this army that's coming against him, I don't remember the figure. I think it was like 1,800 soldiers. I might be wrong about that. Anybody can look back at this. But it's a smaller Roman army. But if he can beat them, then he's going to be able to rally all the Pictish tribes together and be able to put them into this host that is much larger. So when they come back for a full invasion, he has a better chance of vanquishing them yet again. So that's the whole ritual about as a show. It's a big show to instill confidence in the Picts. And that being said, did you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think, like you say, the purpose of it is to boost the morale, of the Picts. But it starts the story off with, some really eerie action right away. But it also serves as a device to bring in Bran's kind of apprehension and his I don't want to say he looks down upon his people, but kind of he's above them. He's not as savage as they are, and
he's not confident in them.
Right, and he knows that this kind of thing must be done to boost their spirits, but he feels bad about it. He always has this kind of he doesn't really like all this bloodshed and everything that he has to do. He's not like this bloodthirsty, character. He's more about serving his people and doing what needs to be done. So I think that right from the beginning, you got that there's these occult arts going on that are these, savage rites, if you will, that Gunnar is performing, and it just brings this magic element, even though it's not real magic. It's implied that there's going to be, and then of course it goes on to, he's summoning Call with the jewel and all that. So so it is a great mix because the latter half of it is mostly a battle. So where he's got all these races and they're around, they're around the fire with Gunnar and they're trying to figure out what's going on because they have this dilemma because he's relying on the Vikings to help him in the battle, against the Romans, and they have this problem because their king has died and they refuse to follow a king that's not of their own race. So Bran's like, well, what the hell do you want me to do? Like, we need you. Is there no one else you can follow? Will you not follow me? Will you not, follow one of your guys? And they insist that they won't. So Gunnar comes up with the idea that they can summon King Cole, who is, connected because of the Atlantean connection of all these races and everything like that. And yeah, that's the big, first half of it, I think. And it's a really cool vibe because it's a lot of mystery and a lot of tension. There's a lot of tension where they're kind of figuring out how they're going to work together. And because he's bringing all these cultures and these races together, they're trying to make it work. And, it ends up being a really cool thing because he summons Cole, and when Cole appears, he's like, he almost has this godly presence, like these people think he's a ghost, and it's really cool because it's a great way to introduce the connection between Bran and Cole and their lineages kind of being linked, because and this goes back to, we kind of mentioned a little bit about this last time we did Worms of the Earth, but this reoccurring theme of dream magic. I had forgotten that in this one too. He's got Cole is summoned in a dream. He thinks he's dreaming all this, but in reality, it's like this parallel, multi-dimensional kind of thing, or almost like time travel kind of thing. Yeah, you got that theme again, and that, like we talked about, Inlonga did that in Solomon Kane and the Hills of the Dead, and then last time in Worms of the Earth too. He visited Bran and dream magic, so you got that going on again. So there's a lot of cool, weird elements that are not like in Worms of the Earth, where there's this kind of like semi-Lovecraftian type of weirdness, but just the eerie vibe that I always really enjoyed and thought was cool. And then, of course, you get all the action on the latter half. So just an excellent tale, I think.
Very ethereal, the way, and it's sort of ambiguous, I think, as to how Gunnar, you mentioned he called him in a dream, but by what device he called King Cole 100,000 years into their present, which at the time, but it had to do with that red jewel, because Cole had given a red jewel to Brule, his best friend, and which was supposed to have been the first of the line of Bran Mak Morn's line, Brule was. And he had it in a ring, and Cole says, well, I just saw you last night with that jewel in a ring, but now it's in your headband. And at first he thought that was Brule. He thought Bran Mak Morn was Brule, and then he got to looking at him and he's like, no, you're not Brule. And they were trying to explain to him what was going on, and like you said, he just took it as a dream. But there's some sort of connection how he was summoned, because when Gunnar first mentioned summoning Cole, he said, touch the jewel in your headband there.
Right.
Yeah. So, and also there's a Poe, which great the way they placed that Poe quote in there. And I know you're a big Poe guy, so you might be able to tell where it's from. I'll go ahead and read it. I'm sure some of the viewers already know about this, but the Poe quote is, I have reached these lands newly, from an ultimate dim Thule, from a wild weird clime that lieth sublime out of space, out of time. Okay, do you know what that's from?
Yes.
Or was that all?
It's an excerpt from a poem called Dreamland. It's an excellent poem, and I can see why Howard chose to reference that, because it has a similar vibe, a similar atmosphere. So yeah, I encourage anyone to just try and get a hold of that and read that poem when you're reading Kings of the Night, because it does have the same atmosphere, this mysterious, kind of talking about this like mysterious night land. It almost reminds me a bit of some of Clark Ashton Smith's poetry, which of course, all those guys were influenced by Poe. But I did really like the little poetic bits that he put at the beginning of each chapter. It's cool in a story like this that's so like savage kind of, and then to have these little poetic aspects. I noted that too, and I had forgotten about that. And I know I have gone through a lot of Howard's poetry in like what is it, like the Book of Robert E. Howard and those kind of anthologies, but I forgot that he referenced Poe and other guys in some of these, and that was a really cool element.
Okay, so the battle scene. Now, I mentioned before somewhere, I think it might have been a video you and I were doing, that I think there are some great writers as far as battle scenes in Sword and Sorcery. I would cite Carl Edward Wagner and David Gemmell as two of the very best, but I think Howard is second to none when it comes to writing battle scenes. And if anybody needs proof of this, and it goes on for pages here in this, I'm not going to read it on the video, but if anybody needs proof of this, that Howard was the best at writing battle scenes, all they have to do is read Kings of the Night and compare it to anything else they've read. And his battle plan, Bran Mak Morn had this battle plan, but the whole thing, like you said, was depending on that Viking, there were a band of mercenaries or whatever. They were Vikings. They were pirates that he had captured. They weren't mercenaries, pirates that Bran Mak Morn had captured and had them swear fealty to him to help them in this battle against the Romans. And it was their leader who swore the oath to Bran. And the leader died in some kind of skirmish, I think, with a Roman, like one of them shot him with an arrow or something like that. And he died. So then they weren't going to honor the bargain. That's why King Cole has to be called from 100,000 years ago to get these men to follow a king of their own race. And so after they get King Cole there, Bran Mak Morn and King Cole are having this discussion about the battle plan. And it just so happened, and Bran couldn't fully plan the battle because he couldn't depend on those Vikings, because they were already talking about bailing out and going over and fighting for the Romans, which is, the biggest insult possible. So when that chieftain or whoever's assumed the role as the chieftain for the Vikings has decided he's not going to fight for them, he tells Bran Mak Morn to, bring him a king, and he would fight for him, a king of his own race. So when they show him Cole, he says they make this agreement that if Cole can best this chieftain who's caused them to revolt against Bran Mak Morn, if he can best this chieftain, then they'll follow him into battle. Of course, Cole makes quick work of him and kills him. And I'm already giving spoilers away, but I think this is necessary to talk about this here. So they're discussing the battle plan, because now they've got these Vikings. The Vikings they get excited when they see their leader killed. These guys are just a bunch of savages. They all are. So they swear an oath that they will follow them into battle, and they hold the gorge with a shield wall. The Vikings do. That's the plan. And Cole, of course, leads them into this to fight and hold this gorge. But when they were initially talking about the battle plan, Cole said, well, what I would do is, put some men there in the gorge, and then have archers, when the Romans come into the gorge, have the archers firing down on the Romans and hemming them in. And then on one side they would have cavalry, and then on the other side chariots come racing down. And that was exactly Bran's plan. But he said, I couldn't do that because I didn't know that I could depend on them to hold the gorge, because they were revolting. So anyway, it turns into a hell of a battle. Everybody should read this. Anybody who's interested in sword and sorcery should read this story. Just one of the greatest feelings of triumph I think you can get from reading one of these kinds of one of these stories.
Definitely. And I think that the ending, it's kind of difficult to talk about this stuff without giving some things away. And
go ahead. I think people are expecting it from us by now.
But it's very interesting. So you have that, like I said, the whole kind of supernatural summoning thing going on at the beginning. Then when it gets going with this battle, you almost forget about that because it's just so much action and everything's happening. Then the way Cole exits the scene is really wild. They're about to deal the death blow to him. Again, these are spoilers, so if somebody doesn't want to hear it, they mute it or something. But yeah, they're about to deal the death blow on him, and then all of a sudden it's like this force. They see this, like, this vision of his homeland like open up in the scene behind them. So like the heather and the whole valley, wherever they're in, the ridge, I guess, vanishes, and you see behind Cole like the towering spires of Atlantis or Valusia or whatever it is, and then he's just like taken back, and Bran and them see this, and they're like, they're really freaked out about it. They're like, what the hell just happened? So then Cole wakes up, and he's in his normal on his throne or laying on his couch or whatever, and he's like, "Oh, I just had this crazy dream and everything." But then it leaves Bran, after the battle's won and everything, really kind of brooding and pondering. And even though they're victorious, and like you say, you get that sense of triumph when it happens. He still feels like he's not really feeling all this senseless violence and all the duties of the king. And you feel the burden that he has, and he has this loyalty to his people, but he's not like, he doesn't feel really like happy about it. And it's just another reminder of his character, and another thing that sets him apart from other guys who would be like, hell yeah, we kicked ass kind of thing. Bran's like still not, even though they won, he's not happy that all these people were killed. And he says earlier on that even at the very beginning, when they're sacrificing the Roman to read the outcome of the battle in the heart, he didn't even like that. He's like, I don't really like killing this guy and everything. So it's just something to point out, because a lot of these guys, you think of these badass, warriors, and they're just out for blood and killing, and Bran's not really like that. So yeah, the whole thing is just, definitely one of the best Bran Mak Morn stories, and one of Howard's best ever, like you said. And yeah, that's pretty much what I can say about it. I definitely recommend checking it out. I was thinking about that ending part where Cole is taken back. I don't know what Howard intended with that. I don't know if it was like the magic, the spell had worn off, and it was just in the nick of time, or if it was something to do with like some higher powers. Because we think of like Atlantis, you think of like a more evolved civilization, and they had like higher technology and things like that. Like, that's what we often think of. I don't know. Howard must have had pretty good knowledge of that, and whatever sources he had to learn about, like his interpretation of Atlantis.
I think most of those. Go ahead.
What's
go
that?
Ahead. I started to say, I think most of those guys relied on was her name, Helena Petrova Blavatsky's works from back then about Atlantis and Lemuria, and I think it's The Secret Doctrine was a very popular book from her, but it was an occult work, and a lot of it inspired a lot of people, everybody from the Weird Tales writers to Guido von List, the rune magician from the early 1800s or late 1800s, early 1900s in Germany. But it influenced a lot of fantasy writers as well as occultists.
Yeah, that's a good point. And if that's the case, then yeah, they definitely would have known, those kind of Atlantean myths, because those are really, really a big part of her works. So yeah, so I wonder if his intention is that there's, like I said, some kind of Atlantean technology or force that like, takes him back, and it leaves Bran Mak Morn and Cormac really puzzled. They're kind of like, that was just crazy, and they're almost like in a state of awe, because everything that happened with the battle, Bran's emotions at the end of him kind of having this bittersweet victory, and then that whole thing of them seeing that vision of whether it's Atlantis or Valusia or whatever, and then Cole just disappearing. It's just like leaves them kind of like shocked, and that's how it ends. So it's really cool ending in that way.
Yeah, definitely. And I was going to mention the very ending of it, but I'm going to leave that for the readers, since if you haven't read this story, you've got the last page to look forward to. Yeah. So, well, that's about all I can think of to say about it. How about yourself?
Yeah, me too. I want to say that I remember coming across a comic strip of this one time, like somewhere, in one of those like Savage Sword of Conan anthologies or something like that I thought was pretty cool. That's the only other thing that I might want to mention. Aside from that, yeah, you can't touch the original story. It's awesome. Between Worms of the Earth and Kings of the Night, and also the other couple Bran Mak Morn tales, it's like a must-have anthology for sure.
Mm-hmm. And now I've when I did the reread of it for us to discuss it, it was from this, which is Bran Mak Morn, The Last King, published by Del Rey. I don't know if another publisher has picked it up. Yeah, that's a great cover there too. I prefer the older covers, but I generally read, if I reread a story, I read from this text here, just because it has a lot of some extra stuff in it from Howard scholars and whatnot. And, you're getting the unexpurgated text on all the Howard stuff, which I don't think the Bran Mak Morn stuff was ever tampered with. But some of the Conan stories were by L. Sprague de Camp and Lynn Carter, or Sprague de Camp mainly. So anyway, with that being said, this has been Matthew Knight and Howie Bentley for Sword and Sorcery Heavy Metal. Be sure to like and subscribe and tune in next week.